I want to get into this book, man. I really do.
Okay. Well, before we get into the book, we've already shilled our stuff. We got to shill his stuff. So let's get this segment 1 thing up.
That's why I'm here.
Oh, I hope so. I almost hit the wrong button. I almost ended the stream.
That would be bad.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time I did it, too. That's the funny thing.
He's kicked himself out so many times from misclicks.
Yep. Okay, so there we go. Do that. But this time I'm going to do it the right way, and I'm going to do it. Boom. Start there. And there we go. We start with the YouTube. So go ahead and give Jim a subscription here. I don't know if you can see all that, but I mean, you can find him at Grim Jim if you know how to use the YouTubes. Obviously,
it's / postmortem video, all one word, I think.
Oh, and, that's right. You have
tell everyone a little bit about what your YouTube channel is about.
I do YouTube badly, so it's about whatever I want it to be about. Though I try and cluster some videos together around themes to at least come to some kind of arrangement with the algorithm. So I talk about gaming stuff, design thoughts, politics, social commentary, media, whatever takes my fancy. Sometimes I debunk stuff, which has been actually really good for the channel, because if you criticize white supremacists, they get really angry and they share your link everywhere. So, and the same thing happens if you criticize the crazy people on the other side of the aisle as well. So yeah, I do that kind of thing occasionally.
So Shadzar says, aha, he is the death metal RPG guy.
Kind of, I guess. Yeah. See,
I see the Mork Borg here, which as somebody who I love the Free League games. Well, I don't like Simba Room so much because I think it's a weird system. But the Year Zero Engine ones, and I really debated getting Mork Borg, and then I didn't. It's just not my thing.
It's a beautiful object. It's very hard to read or to reference or to use. If you scroll back up close to the top, I actually say metal-inspired RPGs suck.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah, apparently I watched that one.
And it's like black metal or death metal itself. I'm into it up until someone starts making noises. It just loses me.
So can I mention a band name for you?
Yeah.
Camelot.
Can I mention a band name for you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a couple actually. Goatcraft is pretty good. He does sort of folk synth metal, and Primitive Knot are really good.
I haven't. After the stream, if you want to shoot me a message on Discord with those, I'll check them out, because I like metal music, but I usually hate metal singers because I don't want. I want somebody who can sing. And what I've learned from my 2 favorite bands of all time, I'm not talking the modern stuff, old Queensryche and current, Roy Khan Camelot, I really need a good singer. But I like that type of music. So
I'm really more of a goth punk metal sort of guy than that. I like the idea of it. Like, I like the idea of the metal RPGs, but I just think the execution is a bit off.
Well, we might talk a little bit about that today. I think we're going to focus more on horror, but I think conceptually it might be some of the same, because you were talking, and I don't want to spill any future videos or content here, but you're talking about transgressivism in games. And it, Heathen Dog brought that up to me as well, and I have started to think about it. And yeah, I'm going to leave it at that for now, but I think that it holds an important niche if done correctly.
Yeah.
But has it been done correctly? Find out later. I'm going to move on to, I want to do the website last. So let's check out the Twitter pages. That's your personal one, correct?
Yep. That's me.
Right. Grimsaur, you can see it right there.
Grimasaur.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Grimasaur, you're right.
Thereby hangs the tale. My old account was Grimachu. I made the mistake of criticizing Will Wheaton.
Oh my God, that'll bring the Crusaders.
Yeah, and that got me banned from Twitter, but I think it was by an automated system.
Shut up, Wesley.
Pretty much. Because I've tried to get hold of anyone at Twitter, and nothing's happened, but they've left my replacement accounts unmolested. So I'm assuming they know that I was just knocked off by an automated system and are just letting me be, I guess.
Do you use Minds at all?
I was using it. I've kind of stopped using it.
So I got banned from Minds. How do you get banned from Minds? I got banned.
Were you posting lolicon?
I don't know what I was posting. Well, I mean, no, I was actually just posting stuff to our content here. All of a sudden it says, you've been banned from Minds. So I sent him a message saying, WTF, if I did something wrong, just let me know. And it just said, all they would respond back is, you got 3 strikes against you. For what, asshats? Some whatever.
Sounds like someone abusing the system. But, no.
Yeah, I you know what? If that's the way it's going to be, though, I hate social media as it is anyway. I understand I have to have it for Legion of Myth. Just, I outside of that, I hate it anyway. So I wasn't losing sleep over it. Just, how did I get banned? Let's check over to now the professional site.
Ooh.
At Mort Post. So what goes on this one?
I don't actually have control of that account as a sort of insulation against it potentially being banned. So it's just automated posts. So unless I remember to go and check it, I won't see your comments there. So make sure you mention @Grimasaur if you want to get my attention.
Gotcha. Oh, look at that. He's not following us from his automated account. What the hell?
I'm so sorry.
Damn robot.
And I'm all for voting for robot overlords in 2020. Now I don't know. Just saying. All right. Let's do this one first.
Overlords 2020. Could it be worse? There's
I don't think so. I don't think so. Postmortem Studios. Here we go at post-mort, or as we like to say in the IT world, posttacmort.com. And you can check out, look at this. We've got role-playing games, story games. Look at that, Shadzar. He even defines it, story games for you.
Shadzar is really, in our chat, he's really big on separating role-playing games from fairy foo-foo storytelling time games. Yeah, you can see where he falls on that specific conversation, but yeah. So he's pretty happy you did that.
Cool.
Scrolling, we got some featured products. Actual effing monsters, because it's segment 1. Look at that, I caught myself this time.
You did. Good job.
But
fornicating is a good substitute word.
Oh, there we go. Copulating. Breaking the limits. We've got this as 5 or 6 pounds. I don't know what that translates into kilos, but hey, whatever. And a little description of the games. Just what we're saying is you should check out his site. There are a bunch of stuff here, and we're going to be looking at one of them. Go back for a second. Let's actually go back up here. Let's check the role-playing games out real quickly. What we got here? We got, does that say Korean? I can't read that small.
Korean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tales of Gore. Oh, Blood. One we're going to be talking about today. Look at all these games. Now, are these all created by you or published by you or a combination of both? Or
almost everything is written by me. Some things are written in cooperation with others, and I occasionally publish things by other people. So we sell stock art by Brad McDevitt, industry veteran, used to work for GDW and others. So we've got stock art by him and a few others. Rob Necronomicon does some art and so on. And yeah, occasionally I work with other people. I've been farming out the Korean adventures to find writers. We were talking beforehand about how artists are flakes.
Mm-hmm.
As a writer myself, I find writers are flakes. So it's hard to find
Have you
writers.
heard my thesis on writers? Am I going
to want to punch you after I hear this?
You might. I actually no. So and part of it's good. I don't usually blame writers for writing issues, because writers are part storyteller, and their whole concept is to get what they want in their head on the page. It's editors I have a problem with. And what I've been noticing recently is that, first of all, especially with self-publishing, I struggle reading for various reasons. There was this book that I did a review of about a year or so ago when we had the old Legion Myth Weekly live stream. It was called Shatterstorm? Crap, now I forget the name of it. Whatever. Anyway, it was like I had to give it 2 reviews, because if it's a professionally published book, it's shit. It's bad. But for just a storytelling thing, what I called campfire stories is actually pretty good. So if you didn't care about the language used or the fact that some of the characters might be a little two-dimensional and that the chapters end that quickly, it was like build, solve, done. What the? Okay. So, depending on what you...
I write stories too. So if you want to get into some of this sort of indie publishing inside baseball stuff. We can talk about that later.
I'm writing my own RPG, and I actually have a couple of questions for you regarding that. So cool. Yes, and I'll even tell you a little hint right now. With Blood, there were some things in Blood that I was shaking over.
It was written in 2006.
That's true. Which will bring up a question at some point. Look. If you tell me it's self-written, self-published, indie published, and so forth, I'm less critical of it. Some people think that's hypocritical, but I'm like, no. But personally, that's also part of the problem is everybody's just throwing out stuff out there right now, game after game after game. Go to Kickstarter, and they're like 10, 15, 20 games on Kickstarters. Sure, half of them are just D&D 5e clones, but the other ones, you just look at them like, why are you writing this? There are already 10 games like this. We don't need another Call of Cthulhu. We don't need another Rifts. We don't need another D&D. We don't need... Come up with something original. Segue. By the way, let's get to some original posts here. Is this your blog site?
This is my blog. It used to be my main site overall, really. So there's sections for links. I mean, you don't have to go to my site to buy stuff. I would just prefer it if you did, because I get a larger percentage that way. But if you have accounts on drive-through and so on, you'll find my stuff there.
I try to avoid drive-through personally now, after some shenanigans. But
there are some issues.
Postmortem Studios.wordpress.com. So check out if you want to hear what Grim has to say. I have read a few of these. I have not read them all. But we'll scroll down here real quickly so you can get an idea of what... Hey,
that's Rob Necro's art. Yeah, I make T-shirts too. There's a link to them from the store site.
Teespring, if I saw correctly.
Yes, and the latest shirts are that British Experimental Rocket Group one and an Ahegal Bear. I always have trouble saying it. So
I imagine. It sounds like you just made it up.
Anything else you want us to show of yours before we get into the game?
Well, if you do go to the blog, that first one there, I'm doing a big material stuff, real physical products giveaway. So all you have to do is review something or post about the site, link back to it, and let me know, because as we all know, social media is not terribly good at informing us when people mention us or post anything about us anymore.
Or just human nature, you might miss it.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of stickers, some cards, some spooky dice, a bunch of books, a whole load of stuff. And that's how to enter.
All right, everybody, go to postmortemstudios.wordpress.com and click on that first link, the one that says October giveaway. And check that out.
And follow the rules and maybe get some stuff, including
one of the have you noticed this in your time of being a YouTuber? I don't know if you do any streaming and so forth, but one of the things, so we had what we called the Legion with Weekly live stream. It lasted like 5 years. And one of the things that blew my mind is how much free stuff we were willing to give away that people just didn't enter. You like comic books? I love comic books. You want a free comic book? Love a free comic book. Click this one button and you can...
Yeah, I have. I did the giveaways for a while and response was always really small. And it got to the point where I think the same person won twice in a row.
We had that.
So I was like, and then the coof hit. So I decided, I don't really want to leave the house and go to the post office and, send people disease through the post or anything. So I suspended it for a while. So I'm hoping it'll take off a bit more this time around. So
yeah, Heathen Dog and I used to talk about that.
Crap.
Cool. Hey, I mean, look, anytime we can help put people your way, I see no reason why we wouldn't do that. You can also, you're more than welcome. We have that shout out channel in our Discord. That's for everybody. It's not just for us. People seem to be shy about that one, but if you've got something to legitimately shout out, use our Discord. Also, maybe get a couple more people. Okay.
That would be cool.
Let's. I'm going to start closing some of this stuff. Oh, I don't know why I'm closing it because I'm going to go back to it after. Well, I got the link saved. All right, let's talk about what we're all here for, but I'm going to share this differently so it's a little bit easier for me. All here for. Boom. There we go. Excellent. Remember, everybody, during segment 3, and I'm going to do this right now simply because I don't want Grim to get caught up in my shenanigans. So I'm going to post this right now. That's a disclaimer. All comments on the stream belong to the individual commenter and do not represent the Legion Myth organization. Grim is his own person. He does not speak for me. I do not speak for him. hyperbole, satire, stereotypes, and generalizations, and now added to the list, thank you to the game board captain, assumptions are often and intentionally used for simplicity and or effect. He, him, and his have long been considered neuter pronouns. They are not meant to exclude any gender. I refuse to say they, them to any individual person. And this content is not meant for children under the age of 13 because YouTube and stuff. So subscribe. That was a very, very pathetic scream.
It was bad. We need to, like I said, I got to record Garth.
I know, right? All right. You know what? I'm going to, because more of what I want to say, I do have some notes written down. More of what I want to say is kind of towards the end, although I do have a couple of beginning things.
Yeah, tell us about the game.
Yep.
Tell us what inspiration, or if it's a collaboration or a remake, and take us through the table of contents.
Okay, so Blood is a horror game primarily concerned with sort of splatterpunk. Works particularly well for survival horror. It's taken from an older version of the game, which I happen to have a copy of here.
Is that like face skin?
Yes.
Awesome.
By Norley Tucker, Stephen Osborne, and Paul Campion. This was released in, I think, 1990.
That's what it says.
Yes, 1990. And we played the ever-loving fornication out of this game.
So what brought you to this game instead of, say, like a Call of Cthulhu, more mainstreamish type?
Well, we had played a lot of Call of Cthulhu, and at the same time we were playing this, we were also playing a lot of vampire and gothic horror and so on. But we'd also always really been into the Night of the Living Dead movies. And when I flipped through this and I saw that it had a quite hardcore system, and gratuitous critical hits, and already had rules for zombies, we were like, okay, this is the thing to go to for playing out a zombie apocalypse game. And that's mostly what we did with this. Okay. It's British, and that sensibility comes through in some ways. I think a sort of unbidden, unmentioned influence is like the schlocky horror novels of people like Sean Hudson. You were in the 80s, you had this sort of big boom of paperback, really sort of gory horror, particularly here in the UK, and I think that's a big influence on it. We'll probably get into this a bit later, but Britain has a particular set of, it's just different slightly when it comes to things like horror, post-apocalypse, science fiction. There's an identifiable British character, which I think you can see if you compare something like 28 Days Later to Night of the Living Dead.
I may be oversimplifying when I say this, but there seems to always be like a touch of humor mixed in. Anytime I watch British, I don't want to call them slasher flicks. I'm not a horror aficionado. I like what I like, and I've watched a few. But if you start getting too deep, I'm not going to know any of them. But the few that I've seen, I wouldn't say that they're slapstick comedy, but it's almost like it's there to lighten the mood or to keep you entertained to the point where you're not just sitting there going, "Oh my God, what's going to happen next?" At least that's just the feeling I get.
And to throw the horror into sharp relief as well, I think, to have the contrast there. I think Brits are very self-conscious and self-aware, and that's part of what brings that in. I mean, if you look at something like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, you see the humor touch of elements there too. And that's fantasy, but it still has a gritty, horrific edge and a down-to-earth edge. And I think those are not universals, but characteristic of British gaming, British genre fiction overall. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned the cover. That's what grabbed my attention off the shelf. I think the only other book that really grabbed me off the shelf in the same way was Vampire First Edition, and that's just because it was so different. It was so strikingly
it was minimalist,
graphical. And that was just total contrast to anything else that was being produced at the time. And this, doesn't F around. You know exactly what you're in for when you look at the cover. So we played a lot of survival horror games using this, and then 12 years later or so, I was setting up my own company and thinking about games that I would like to make. And I thought, well, they haven't done anything else. there's no harm in me tracking down the people who created this game and asking them if I can do another edition of it. And yeah, it paid off. He said yes. I managed to talk to the original artist and get his permission to use his old art pieces, even though they weren't necessarily the most flattering pieces he'd ever done.
Did you work in collaboration with him, or is this solely your reimagination of it?
I ran it all past him, but he wasn't that interested in being that involved. He's just happy for me to send him a few bucks every month from sales. So, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, that's just a great, in and of itself right there, just a great story for anybody watching out there in terms of like, hey, what's the worst that can happen? Somebody say no? If there's an IP out there you like that nobody's utilizing, especially if it's an indie IP, check it out. Go try.
I would say, just by asking, you're putting yourself ahead of 90% of other people. Most people don't ever try. So what's the harm? I did approach a couple of other companies about properties that had sort of faded away. One of those was an obscure game called Tales of Gargantir, which was published in Scotland. And when I tracked those guys down, they'd quit anything creative and they were doing I think it was house rentals and refits and stuff, but they weren't interested in having anyone else touch the game. They just sort of had it locked away in a vault. So yeah, they'd gone into property for whatever reason. And I've also approached the guys who created Nightlife, which is a sort of precursor to Vampire with a more punk than a gothic sort of sensibility, but they wanted way too much money. They were massively overestimating what the property was worth. But you ask, sometimes you get permission. And
it's just like real life. You're going to ask a lot. You're going to get more no's than yeses, but it's those yeses that pan out and work for you. Yeah. And I got to tell you, just listening to the games that you're mentioning, one of the things that I kind of pride myself on compared to a bunch of other people out there, even some of the people in Legion of Myth, is that especially in the 80s and 90s, I like to say I played or at least heard of dang near everything that was ever created. Not so much now, but you just mentioned a couple of games. I'm like, no clue, never heard of it. Now, part of it could be that the horror genre isn't my thing. The edgelord type games just aren't my thing. But it just also goes to show how big the genre even was back then. If some of those people before social media could have got more notoriety, maybe they wouldn't be selling properties right now. They'd be making the third edition of the game that they love.
I'm a bit weird. I didn't start with D&D like most people do. And my groups have always been system agnostic. That's not D&D, 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 D&D. That's all we want to play ever. They've always wanted to play lots of different games.
Where were you when I was growing up? God damn it. If I could just anywhere I go, it's like, hey, want to try this game? No, we just play D&D. How about this one? No, we just play D&D. It's like,
we were hiding in my English teacher's classroom playing RPGs so we wouldn't get kicked in the balls. That's where we were.
That was the same story I told last week.
Yeah, that was Sean's story right there. All right, so let's take a look at the table of contents for a second.
Okay, scrolling back.
Because this is where I have a problem. And
we're gonna say good things too, right?
Yeah,
I have some good things.
But this
2006. Just reminding you.
It's not bad. There it is. He's highlighting.
I know. You already told me. So.
This was just a missed opportunity. Calling your insanity mechanic mental issues. It just seems bland. It seems vanilla. It seems, because when you read it, you're like, oh, it is not so much that. It is the horrible spiral into permanent psychosis type thing. Calling it mental issues is so, it doesn't pop.
My memory is vague, but it sounds to me like I was trying to take the piss by calling it mental issues. I was using British understatement and tongue in cheek, because it is that spiral down into madness and insanity.
Yeah.
With that said,
that's got to be like, oh no, you're a little scared, you run for a round or whatever. And then I read it, I'm like, no.
They're written. I love the way they were written. I like when I looked at that, I normally think that Rifts has the best. Again, sorry, AAA. It's more what I know. I like the Rift's insanity system. When I read this, I said, how can I mesh the two? Because I'd be more apt to run a game of Rifts because I know it. or I shouldn't say Risk, more like Palladium Fantasy or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, something like that. But I liked how the mental issues were written here. And when we get to page 80, we'll take a little bit of time to look at them.
I've used the base ideas behind this in a lot of other things that I've produced since. Because I don't think fear and madness is handled particularly well. And some of that is just due to the nature of how it works. But I'll go into that more once we get to
yes.
to get to that.
All right.
Max Leal wants to talk about creatures, and you told us earlier that that you want to focus on some of the criticals because they are, I thought Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other nastiness was bad with the critical hit table. I thought it was really deadly with the critical hit table until I read this one.
So let me clarify something for Heathen Dog. There was no critical hit table in TMNT that was used different. What I did is I used the Modern Arms and Equipment Guide, whatever it's called for Palladium, that added penetrating value, which made bullets really dangerous. So it's actually a separate Palladium book that's hard to get now. But yes, it was my game that he's talking about in regard to that. And yes, the criticals in that game were deadly. Yeah, but the ones in this one are more interesting. They're deadly.
But they're deadly, yeah, but they are graphic.
Yes.
What was that game with the plastic overlays?
Overlay.
For targeting characters. Millennium's End.
I heard of it, don't know it, never played it.
So you play members of this private security company in what was the near future at the time, and they had plastic overlays which you put over figures, sort of images of a standard person, like behind cover or crouching or whatever. And then you'd roll to determine where you hit. That was massively deadly. I was playing a door kicker character.
Is that like a 90s game?
It was a 90s game. Chameleon Eclectic, I think, made it. Yeah, I was playing this door kicker character in the heaviest armor possible, riot shield, the works. Got killed with a 22 to the throat.
What? Oh, because it hit the throat. Okay. You didn't have that little dangly throat shield?
Apparently not.
So I want to take a look. I have some, again, I didn't use note cards this time. I used an actual notebook. I'm getting better. But I do want to, there's something on page 2 here I wanted to read. It says, under the picture, read one paragraph, the history of blood. Oh, yeah. I actually want to read this. Sorry, I didn't swap things around here. Give me just one moment to swap my screens around a little bit so that I'm actually looking at the game here. All right, so Blood is a game of unflinching. There we go, that's a word. Splatterpunk horror inspired by slasher films. Now, one of the questions I asked a little earlier was like, and it wasn't directly towards him, even though it is going to be toward him later. I was like, what separates this from games like Call of Cthulhu, Chill, and some other ones that were done? And I think this answers it right here. I'm gonna let Grim speak for himself, but I don't know of any other game that focuses on slasher films, gross out horror, and the literary works of lights of Graham Masterson, Sean Hudson, and James Herbert. Did he really write graphic?
Yes. If you read The Rats in particular, that was James Herbert, wasn't it?
Oh, I never knew that. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, he's not as known for it, but yeah, a lot of his works are pretty graphic. There's a scene in The Rats where they eat a baby, and it's just horrendous.
That would be graphic.
Yeah.
This is contemporary horror where we do not look away from the killing blow. We revel in it. We enjoy the disgust, the fear, and the terror for what it is, a dark and horrible fantasy. Now, I talked to Grim about this a little bit, in our introduction a couple days ago, and Heathen Dog and I, we've talked about this to some small degree, maybe not on this show, but I think it was on this show, where it's funny to me that Heathen Dog runs way more horror. He's in the Call of Cthulhu Master Tournaments and so forth. I mean, he can really do horror, but he doesn't do this, generally speaking. Me, on the other hand, I don't do horror at all. I suck at horror. You don't want me running horror or anything. I do more Dungeons and Dragons-y type stuff, fantasy, right? Some sci-fi. But I love the visceralness of this, where some people be like, you don't have to describe all that. I'm like, no. I think it's important to describe it. Now, this isn't going to sound like horror at all to anyone, but this is what I want you to visualize. Watch the first few minutes of Braveheart. Remember when the kid goes into the shed and everybody's hanging there? And you're just like, oh my God, what happened there? I mean, this is not real graphic, but my point being is imagine that kid seeing that, the pools of blood literally on the ground and so forth. Sometimes I feel it is important to convey that message. So I tend to be more visceral in that regard, yet I don't do horror. So that's why parts of this game I absolutely love. And this paragraph I thought was important to understand going forward.
Horror is, next to comedy, probably the hardest genre to pull off in tabletop role-playing, because at the end of the day, you're all sat around a table with snacks and drinks and everything else. I think what you're saying speaks to Heathen's skill as a games master. If he can pull off the more esoteric and psychological horror of Call of Cthulhu or something. Now, if you're going for splatter and gross out, it's easier. That's not to say that it's bad. So if you're going to do horror, that's the route that's easier to take, in the same way that a lot of comedy games rely on being formulaic. So like if you play Paranoia, you know that you're going to get caught up in bureaucracy, you're going to be backstabbing each other, someone's going to be outed as a communist, the R&D equipment is going to fail spectacularly, and it'll be a miracle if you complete the mission. But it's all quite formulaic and laid out, and you kind of, the expectation is part of what makes the comedy work. And in a similar way, yeah, this is the easier way to go, which isn't to say that it's bad.
Right. I would say the whole splatter gore thing is easier, but harder to maintain and still be entertaining.
If you're doing like a slasher thing, like I'll be honest with you, how many times, and by the way, Grim, going to spoil something here, but there are pretty good, I don't think it was a rule, I think it was a concept in this game in terms of how you say how to handle, like, call it superpowers, if you want to call it that, are the abilities of, like, say, the slasher. But how many D&D games have you ever watched? Or how many movies have you ever watched where somebody's been like, this is so easy to beat. Just pick that up, smack the guy in the head, and you're done. Oh my God. It's the cliche, like, get out of the house, you idiot. You know, from the old 80s slashers flicks type stuff. I think it's hard to maintain the edge of that slasher unless you give it some kind of superpowers. And that's where I think that this game dove into addressing that. From the visceral combat, I keep saying the word visceral, but from the nature of combat, how just deadly it is, which is something I absolutely appreciate. I love deadly games. To the fact that you even talk about how to do some of the psychological horror, and we'll look at this just in a moment. You talk about how to treat the slasher. Because to me, you could never convince me that a slasher game would be fun. But after reading this, it's like, on second hand, I actually think I could have some fun with this, or as a player, not as a game master, I'd suck. But
yeah, I mean, one way to get around that is to not just have one antagonist. If you go for something like Wrong Turn or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where you've got a whole family or a clan or something, then they can have their little victories against some of them, but there's always going to be more.
Yeah, you're always going to the sheriff, and then the sheriff turns out to be the older brother of the killer, and stuff like that. Yeah.
I ran a game based around the legend of Sawney Bean from Scottish folklore. This band of supposed cannibal bandits that were picking people off and living in caves and so on. And one of the main characters died almost straight away, the player characters. So I let him play the family dog, and that turned out to be a fantastic thing. It just really worked out. He really got into it, and it played out really well. So having reserved characters is another way to work around.
And you do mention that in here. That's awesome. I've been skeptical. I was skeptical of Garthon. I don't know if Heathen Dog knows that. It's one of the other actually Legion Myth founders, but his character, I wasn't ready for it at first. I let a guy play a fairy dragon one time. I let somebody play a dragon one time. And these are all things where I'm like, this is so outside my wheelhouse. I never allow stuff like this. But I will tell you that with the exception of jokers that want to play Kender, I'm typically open to it once I talk to you about it, as long as I know that you're not screwing around. And you can find, like you said, the family dog or the fairy dragon. That dude who played the fairy dragon was awesome. It was the best character in the group. So I can see it, and I like it when things like that happen. You're like, oh, my character died. Oh, crap. Can I play the dog? Sure. I'm sure that's not exactly how it went, but the point being, I mean, the fact that one, you did that as a game master, and should I say it the right way since we're talking about a British book, the games master, and the player Did you say? I'm sorry, I'm already losing my mind. Did you say that the player asked for that, or was that just the only thing?
Yeah,
available?
they presented it as an idea because they wanted to stay at the table. They were going to stay anyway and watch how it unfolded, but they wanted to take part. So I thought, yeah, why the hell not?
That's great. I love it. Do you want to talk about any of these things that you may or may not have problems with? These other places you worked for?
I mean,
or we can just. Oh, I mean, not go deep, but just to show your street cred off here.
Okay, I've worked for Steve Jackson Games, Mongoose Publishing, Wizards of the Coast, Nightfall Games, bunch of other small publishers.
Oh, you did Nightfall or worked on Nightfall?
Nightfall Games, the guys who made SLA Industries.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was thinking game Nightfall.
Cubicle 7. I've worked for a lot of people. And overall, at this point, I prefer working for myself.
So do you usually do systemic work, narrative work? What is normally your involvement?
Bit of everything.
All of the above. Okay.
Yeah. All rounder, I guess. Yeah, I don't know what there is to say about that particularly.
Just wanted to get your street cred out there.
Wizards are a bit of a pain in the ass to work for. Steve Jackson Games have powerful attack lawyers. Mongoose Publishing was
that's sad to hear because Steve Jackson is one of the few companies I still fall back on that hasn't gone to me down the crazy road yet, and so that's sad to hear.
Well, okay, so to explain. Me and my writing partner, the first thing we ever wrote was the Munchkin's Guide to Power Gaming. So we wrote that in 1999. I think it came out in 2000. It was the first thing I ever professionally wrote, and it won an Origins Award.
Oh, nice.
And that spawned the entire Munchkin phenomenon. Our contract was shit, so we get none of the Munchkins money at all.
Is that because it was your first thing, just kind of the ignorance
because it was
of
our
being
first
new?
thing? Yeah. We didn't really know what we were doing. Didn't pour over the contract. We did try and mount a bit of a challenge to it, but it just went nowhere. And the lawyer said, "Yeah, we tried." That's the. If I was in their position, I would have shared the wealth a little bit, but then I'm clearly not a great businessman. So there you go. It hurts a bit, but on the other hand, I'm glad that you had the
awakening.
Yeah, had the awakening, and straight out the gate had something that's brought so many people fun. Yeah, who can argue against that? Really, just money would be nice.
Money is always good.
I used to be in personal finance. Heathen Dog remembers these days, and one of the things that used to drive me nuts is when people would be like, "I don't worry about money in my life." How do you pay your bills? And if you don't worry about money, can you give it to me? Because I like paying my bills,
Look, I'm a left-wing anarchist. When I first set up my company, I tried to set it up as a cooperative, and that didn't work. At some point, you got to bow to reality and make a compromise with the real world. So
sure,
yeah.
All right, let's don't pirate the game.
I'm going to skip over to page 9.
Okay, I can scroll.
Blood played.
Where's page 9?
I'm going to read a little bit of this.
Okay, what paragraph so I can highlight it?
Right there.
Right. Okay, it's just the first paragraph?
Yep.
Okay.
Blood can be played in a variety of ways depending on how your games master and group want to play it. Indeed, several of these styles can be mixed together in one adventure or campaign, and it is fairly likely that almost any session will include an element of humor, in-game or out, since people play RPGs for fun. I like that. I like that sense because it sets the tone for the game, how it's supposed to be played. You don't tell them how it's supposed to be played, but you get in their subconscious with that very well written paragraph. The two things that stand out are these styles can be mixed together into one adventure or campaign, and there's going to be some humor. Have fun with it, and then we're going to go in and we're going to gloss over all of the suggestions for the mixed styles that you're talking about. And of course, there's the tongue-in-cheek. Most horror films contain notes of humor in them. Often, and this is more of a British thing, so I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
Crap. No, but some are out-and-out comedies. They're the likes of Shaun of the Dead, Brain Dead, which was an excellent film, and the Chucky franchise hang their hooks on horror comedy. And that is true.
I don't see Cemetery Man in here.
I don't see Cemetery Man either. Yep.
I don't know that one.
It's hard to find. That Heathen Dog introduced me to Cemetery Man back in the 90s when we were in the Air Force, and I tried to find it to show my wife and couldn't. I had to go to his Plex server for it in order to find it. It's with Rupert Everett of all people.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really good. I liked it. Anyway, and then we go on to Gorefest styles, much the main style of game which Blood was invented. This would take the slasher films in the 70s and 80s and many of the more gratuitous films about cannibals, psychotic hillbillies, and you're talking the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you're talking Jason, the whole, this style fits really well, especially when later on we talk about the criticals and how the killer can kill you in fun and interesting ways. And then we skip over to investigative horror, which is more my wheelhouse, the way I would like to run games. The default style taken by most horror games is the investigative horror. In these games, some incident or other takes place or is stumbled upon by the players, and then they progress to investigate it, find horrific supernatural cause of the problem, and either defeat it or become its victims. And then we move on to the psychological horror. This
is what I want to play. Like, I would love to play with some good role players.
I skipped survival horror. This is your more Romero of the Dead thing, like it says here. Series of Resident Evil. This is where you as players are put in a situation, and you have to escape or resolve the situation.
Doom, the video game.
Yeah, Doom. Well, I kind of like the movie with The Rock, but it's more of a guilty pleasure for me because I recognize the movie was bad. I recognize it was bad. Stop it. All right. But the best genre in which to play Blood, the open-ended nature survival horror, makes it a relatively easy for the GM to come up with scenarios that they can also very much lead to the player's actions. Zombies Rise is a very good place to start in a game, depending on the player characters do. The game can be shaped by their choices and actions. Yeah, I find that survival horror is best for game masters who want to play it fast and loose, because you don't need a whole lot of structure. You don't need a whole lot of framework to your story, because with the survival horror genre, the players themselves have to become inventive, and you will likely not have thought of everything they can think of. So they're going to go in a way where you will not have foreseen and have nothing structured for. So don't. In a survival horror, don't. Just have a basic framework. Try and keep them in the lane, and they will help you. They will help you write the story. And then we have the psychological horror. Psychological horror plays off of horrific situations, tension, and mental anguish. It is much less visceral than most other forms of horror. Those situations may be gruesome. The point is the mental degradation and stress of the protagonist before the situation that they are confronted with, be it the unknown of some terrible deed they are eventually forced to perform. Yeah, this is one where you place moral roadblocks in front of your character. You're like, yes, survival is over here. You doing horrible, nasty things is over here. What are you willing to do to survive? What are you willing to do to escape? What are you willing to do to save someone? You have to make moral and ethical choices along the way, and they are going to be horrible.
I also see it as, what's the term? It's like the loser's conundrum or something like that. Basically, where everything you do, if not in reality, at least mentally, turns to crap on you, and you just have this degradation over time. Yeah. Using the game mechanics of this game, you keep losing your mind and willpower, just right. Your mental points down.
You can make the right choice every time and still feel like you're losing. That's the psychological thing that I'm talking about. And the really good thing about all of these is that, just like you said in the very first paragraph, you can mix them. What was that? So even is there playing player agent? There is player agency sometimes for that specific genre of horror. It is best to let the players take lead sometimes, and then you create the game around them, because they're going to go places you haven't thought of. But you still have to keep them in the lane. Bumpers in the gutters. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway,
a series of trolley problems where the gap between the two tracks gets progressively narrower.
Exactly. Gets worse and worse and worse. And until for a psychological horror, at the end of it, if the players go, fuck this game, and walk away, boom, you did it right. You did it right. Anyway, no, but what he said in the first paragraph, is very important, because mixing 2 or more of these in the same campaign makes it a better campaign. Like the easiest one is an investigative horror can quickly turn into a psychological horror, a survival horror. It can turn into a gore fest because you investigate enough. Now what you're in the people, supernatural horror or cult or whatever now sees you. You're investigating it, and they now know that you're there and hunting them. And so they turn it right back on you and they come after you. And then the gameplay will shift from investigative horror to a gore fest, to a survival horror, to a psychological horror, because now they are after you and the game has changed. That's the easiest one to do. But yeah, mixing 2 or more of these in a campaign will keep the game fresh, will keep your game going long term. And
if that's the intent, I could see like a slasher / psychological horror just being maybe not a one shot, but effectively one adventure. Depending on how long you play, it could be 1, 2, 3 shot, whatever. But just focusing on that, I could find that to be mentally draining after a while. But that's why I'm so interested in it, because while I'm never a LARPer, I don't like LARP. Mm-hmm. I'm the type of person that I really want to get into my character at the table, and if something's psychologically messing with me, I want to explore that area. But I don't think I would want to do it over the course of a 2-year campaign.
Well, that again, if you're changing the base of the game naturally and organically throughout it, switching genres throughout the game, it keeps it fresh. It resets your brain. You have to come at it in a different way if you're going to survive.
Look, if this world's that overrun with shit, I'm just gonna boom. after.
Hey, you know what? You want to check out, you can check out. It's fine.
All right.
Survival horror doesn't mean you have to survive. It just means you have to try. And
fair enough.
There it is.
Fair enough. Doesn't say who has to kill me either. How many experience points am I worth?
And then if we go to
sorry, go on.
One thing I did over the course of a long campaign was right at the beginning of the game, a character died but didn't realize that he was dead.
Oh, you sixth sensed him.
Shyamalan alaikum.
A lot more gory than that, because his body, the decay was arrested, but it gradually began to set in. So, he started off with casually mentioning flies hanging around in the background of a scene, and then gradually ramp it up. And then he's all of a sudden realized that he was dead, and the look on the player's face was priceless. So,
Krantz, I'm not posting that.
And the desperate lengths that he went to try and preserve his character, like bathing in formaldehyde and things like that.
Nice. Unless there's anything you guys want to address specifically here, I would like to start skipping ahead because we're already about 45 minutes into the segment.
Okay.
Is there anything? Sorry, Graham. Make sure that I'm not skipping anything you want to talk about.
You skipped over mythos. Now, right? Everyone knows, and just very quickly, everyone knows and understands the Cthulhu mythos, and so in a lot of ways, it's just not scary anymore. So while I mention that there, I say it's more about creating a consistent mythos, maybe across multiple games or just within your game world, because that way it's fresh, but it also hangs together. An important prong of all my game design in a lot of ways is what I call plausibility. It's not realistic, it's not entirely narrative, but somewhere in that space between, you can hit this sweet spot.
I love that. So one of the things that I have a problem with, like with modern gaming, is like, look, your imagination is infinite. My imagination, I hope, is infinite. But people can think of anything. If you can imagine, these people, you can imagine it, you can do it. No. Because I believe in what is probable over what is possible, because again, all things are possible in somebody's imagination. So when you keep it within that realm of probability, give it a sense of realism. We don't have to say it's exactly realistic, but a sense of realism. I think that just adds strength to a story, because you've got the constraints of effectively what you'd consider the real world around you, but in a little bit more cinematic way, a little bit more narrative way. But it keeps you constrained within. If you see something weird, it's weird. You can't, that's just magic. So I like that concept.
And it maintains immersion, which I guess is kind of falling out of favor in a lot of modern gaming. But for me, that's the goal, to inhabit the character in the world. Yeah.
I'm 100% with you on that one. Oh, no, you interrupt me all the time. I'm absolutely with you on that. I'm a firm believer in immersion. That's why one of the reasons why Shadzar and I go back and forth on the whole storytelling thing, because I think story is important to a game, even in Dungeons & Dragons. I have to feel part of the world. I have to feel part of the narrative that's going around me. And in something like this, in a horror game, to me, that's almost paramount. If you're not feeling it, if it's not horrific for you as a player, either it's a bad game master or there's something that's missing. Maybe you just have lack of imagination. You just can't. Like I'll add enough with my imagination in there anyway. But that's why I like that plausible side of it. I think that is very important. How to I'm the games master. Help know the rules. Forget the rules. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the rules of this game. I thought we would spend some time going into that, but ultimately, I personally decided not to, unless Heathen Dog wants to or you want to, Grim. But here's what I'm going to tell everybody about the rules of this game. If you've played pretty much any, I want to say indie, but any RPG that was developed probably starting around 1989, 1990-ish until about 1995, where there are hyper-realistic charts, attribute roles that tried for the life of them to just be as realistic as possible. In fact, when I first opened this game up and saw the attribute chart, I almost wanted to choke Grim because it copied something I did in the 90s. Like, very similarly with your 30 to 70, mine was a little different than that. And I can show that here if I find it. Character creation. It talks about some of the attributes and so forth. Like, here we go. Your maxes in here. Mine did not look like this, and I rolled them differently, but this is the same basic range I used. So I'm like, wow. But you've got derived stats, you've got multiple actions, and this is something that I would have to say in 2020, most people aren't going to like. But as somebody who played games in the 90s, I recognize this instantly. When you say that, now I've got my question for you is this. Is this yours or did you keep this from the original game?
It's mostly from the original game. I tweaked things a bit to make them a bit easier. And I have a sort of 1/3 complete 3rd edition, which makes things even easier again. But I still want to preserve the heart and the spirit of the game, and you can't really do that by changing the rules too much.
Oh my god!
So
you're my new best friend. Wizards of the Coast. Listen to that last comment.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry.
Sorry, it's more about tweaks and accessibility. The 3rd edition will be, and the actions thing has never quite worked. So I need to find a solution for that.
Gotcha. It was a little confusing for me at first without actually playing it. It was one of those things where I looked at it, like, I'm going to have to play this to see it. I mean, I understand it generically speaking, but I can't fully visualize it. And I'm a visual person in that regard.
What we ended up doing was using tokens to mark your actions, so that you could hold some back, so you could take more actions on the next turn, and then you could physically slide the tokens to keep track, and that worked better. But yeah, that's something that's never quite worked.
Well, the reason why I specifically asked you how much you changed is because for a game done originally in 1990. This is absolutely, with derived stats and all these charts and so forth, absolutely part and parcel of the RPG industry at that time. And I really felt that when I was looking at this, like, oh, this is a game I would have picked up in 1991. I really did. And some people say, well, that's a bad thing. Some people say that's a good thing. I'm going neither way on that one. I'm just saying that if any of this, for whatever reason, anybody watching looks as like, oh, God, I don't get it. Talk to anybody who's a little older. That was playing games in the late 80s, early 90s, and they're going to look at this and be like, oh, yeah, I played games like that.
I mean, it's not like it's Rollmaster. It's not that difficult.
I had one problem with character creation and stats. The main.
Is there a page you need me to go to?
Yeah, the very first one.
Okay.
With the main stats and their minimums and maximums.
Okay. Right here?
Yeah. When rolling, you use a percentile die. So you can get between 1 and 100. Now, here's the thing.
No, I disagree already because I know what he's going to say.
Here's the thing. There's so much variation that you're not going to get a consistently human person. But the one thing that I think would piss players off so badly is that they rolled a 99. They feel really good about that, but then you got to say, sorry, man, you got nowhere to put that.
I knew this is where that was going.
Because
I'm going to be upfront.
Put into appearance.
I don't have a problem telling a player, sorry, that's not the rules of the game. You can't roll above 80. Deal with it.
No, I get it too, but that will viscerally piss someone off.
I don't care. Get pissed.
So well,
and be mad in my horror game.
It's a goddamn do-over.
So I'm a lot more of a fan of bell curves these days, particularly if I'm aiming for something in that plausible space. So for the 3rd edition, it would probably be you'd roll several dice.
I think mine was roll like 5d10 if I remember correctly. It was like 25 plus 5d10 or something like that.
The other thing that I used to do was if someone got a high roll, I'd say, well, you can put that in appearance. So long as it goes within one of those bounds, I let them use it.
How about this? Let's say if somebody rolled a 95, would you just, and it says, look, I want it my strength. You just say, look, just take an 80 then?
No, I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
I'd say you can put it in appearance, but otherwise you got to roll again.
Okay, no, fair enough.
But now the opposite is also true. You roll a 1 and you've already put something in appearance. You have to re-roll that too because it doesn't fall in the range.
Nope, pain threshold.
Fair enough. I'm sorry. You've already
oh my god, a 1 in pain threshold. That would be the worst character ever in this game.
I know, right? But it's so easy. It's so easy to have a crappy stat. And the thing is, out of all of these statistics, none of them are really dump stats. They're all useful.
Right.
Yeah.
One of them is going to suck. Statistically, one of these stats is going to suck badly. And not like, oh, that's a little bad. No, it's going to be shit.
Yeah, but you're not making a hero.
Yeah, exactly. You're making a normal guy, and normal guys are usually shit in some way. So yeah, I get it.
I mean,
I think the bell curve solves that for a normal guy.
Yeah,
yeah, and the bell curve is kind of represented by the brackets in which your stats can be. You know, that's the kind of normative range. But yeah, it's something I'm going to tackle in the
But my whole thing was I understand it, I get it. But if someone rolls a 99 and you tell them, no, I'm sorry, that's too good. You have to re-roll it to something shittier. Viscerally, they're gonna like, I hate you and everything you stand for. And I hope you die in a fire.
So Heathen Dog and I had this discussion as I'm writing my game. Now I've completely revamped the system, completely doesn't even use 20-siders anymore. But it's one of the things that came up where it's like I had a stat threshold that said no, because no human being can be the exact smartest person, the exact strongest person, the exact most constitutional person, the exact best looking person. And he's like, well, if it's on the dice and they can roll it, they should be able to have it. I'm like, no, it says specifically you can have one stat at this rate and then all the rest no. And yeah, so we went back and forth on that one. So I knew where he was going on this one.
Well, they had that in Starfleet Adventures, yeah, whatever, where you can have one stat that's max, but that means that all the other stats are going to be lower.
Well, even Doc Savage, he was like the closest thing to a perfect human specimen, right? In the pulps. But then he had all those advisors who were specialists who were slightly better than him in every particular area. Mm-hmm. So that's another way you can tackle it.
Yeah,
niche protection.
Yeah, if you specialize, then everything else is going to suffer a little bit, just because you've devoted all of this time and energy to this one thing. I get that.
I've been tinkering with a rule system that would. So instead of having a really exhaustive list of skills, you would have like say science as a general skill, and the maximum you could take that up to would be say 3, and then you have to start to specialize. So you'd be science 3, then physics 4, then particle physics 5. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the skill narrows as you progress.
Right.
Not quite sure what to do with it yet, but it works as an idea.
Sure.
Real quickly, I'm going to put this up. So bam, subscribe. Okay, back to this.
All right. So yeah, that was the only thing in character creation that I read. I'm like, ooh, that's going to be a hurdle to some
When
players.
I read it, I first thought of you too. I was like, oh, Ethan Dog's going to be mad about that.
I'm not mad. It's going to be a psychological hurdle to some players because you're making them re-roll a good stat, and they're not going to like it.
No, sorry, you got to be shit.
Blood points, I like the difference. At first, I was like, why does there have to be a difference between hit points and blood points? I like the way this is done. I really don't want to go through it. What I prefer is people to buy the game, take a look at the game. But I think you describe it well. This is the stuff inside of you. It leaks out.
Yeah.
So, energy points.
That was a big thing in the original game. So I couldn't really call it blood without translating the blood points.
Sure.
But I also felt they worked really well. If you remember the old, what was it, Saga Edition Star Wars that Wizards did, they had hit points, and then separately they I can't even remember what it was called. But
is that like the old vitality thing?
Yeah, no.
Yes.
It was kind of. It was like a precursor almost type thing to what they do now. But you're talking about the D6.
No, I'm talking about the Wizards one. It's
the same thing you talked about with the edition. Stargate SG-1, Stargate SG-1, where it had that vitality system. I didn't know they did that in Star Wars also, but it makes sense because it's the same company. So
if you scored critical hits, it was done to hit points, and anything else was done to vitality until vitality ran out.
Gone, right.
Yeah, and in a similar way, you've got blood points, which is your real actual health, and your hit points, which is how much you can shrug off. So it works in a similar way.
Yeah. Try your best to keep that red stuff on the inside.
Yeah.
A cute little picture right there. I love it. So again, we're going to skip most of the game system part. First of all,
it's a percentile system.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you really need to know. Roll D100. Percentages are nice and graspable for people, I think, and they aid that sense of plausibility and realism.
The one thing I want to look at is critical rolls, not the actual critical chart tables, but when you're rolling a skill. The critical
how it changes, how it's got what page is that on? I did.
I'm not sure which page it's
going to be before professions, right?
So it's like 1/10 of your skill is your chance of getting a critical success, and then you kind of reverse it for the chance of a bot.
Actually, I think it was much later in the book, if I remember correctly, because I saw the chart and it made sense to me. I actually kind of liked how it put together. So it basically
made sense with the chart, but with the paragraph explaining the chart,
I didn't read that. Read that. Well, let's look at professions till we get there. But that is a good thing to look over once we get there. One of the things I liked about the professions, I only want to talk about one profession because I thought it was hilarious, and then I read what the profession could do. I was like, oh shit, that's actually really damn good. And that is was it the parent? Is that what it? Yeah, the parent. This skill calm is actually pretty awesome. When I looked up what that does, I was like, hell yeah, I want a parent in every group. Fuck a medic. Well, no, I'd want a medic too. Oh, God dang it. Sorry, segment one. I like this. I was like, I think if I were to play, I would probably play a parent. I don't know if you look these over, Heathen Dog, at all, but calm helps calm somebody down, bring back the mind, and
stop them from freaking out, get them back on task, stuff like that.
Slap in the face a couple times. Go up.
That was partially inspired by an ex-girlfriend of mine who used to play with us, and she would always play the sort of motherly characters and always be there to provide support to the other characters, like a cup of hot sweet tea and make them feel better. So that was...
Well, and mentioning that's even what the calm skill says. It could be soothing words, it could be the hot chocolate, it could be, anything that could calm somebody down. And I'm like, in a horror game, that cannot be overstated, the importance of that.
Right.
So that was the only one.
Page 54. That's where the critical botch chart is.
So again, mental skills, physical skills, as he said, it's percentile based. And there's a very good explanation of how to get your percentages and so forth. So a question about the percentages before we talk about this 54 thing, since I don't want to backtrack, is, so I saw where you put in here that the games master's in control of setting the tone and so forth. So let's say somebody's got a skill of 30%, the games master can add 10, 25, 50% to it. I like those nice, easy round numbers that you mentioned.
Yeah.
But are you, just as creator, are you expecting the games master to do that a lot? And the reason I ask is because when I looked at stats and kind of just ran through in my head some horrible math, because I'm probably not good at it, in terms of making a character, I didn't see too many characters starting with stats or any above like 50% or anything.
Yeah, I think I wrote this before Unknown Armies came out. I can't remember what year Unknown Armies came out.
Okay.
But their approach to skills is quite similar to what I meant with this, even if I didn't explicitly say it, in that this is your chance under a stressful situation for the most part.
Understood.
So that a games master should a lot of the time just kind of hand wave. Yeah,
sure.
If you've got the drive skill, you can run the kids to school without crashing into a tree.
You do mention that in here.
And then the bonuses and penalties is you're still under a stressful situation, but there are other factors at play was the idea behind that.
Because when I was seeing a lot of the skills at like 33% and so forth, I'm like, that means I have a 1 in 3 chance of, I don't know, turning on the power generator or to hide successfully from the slasher. Or I'm like, wow, I'm dead.
Yeah. So, right, if you approach the generator and it's not broken and it's fueled up and, the starter handle is where it's supposed to be and everything, I would just say you start the generator. Because you've got the skill, you know how it works, you know what switches and buttons to pull. If it's under extreme duress, like the slasher is couple of seconds behind you, then maybe I'd make you make a roll, but with a bonus.
Right.
I missed a comment that I want to put up here for YouTube. Currently reading Blood for a potential game. Love the chat on it. Also keen on 3rd edition. So thank you, Todd Zurcher. I hope I said your name right.
Yeah, I have too many projects and not enough time, and there's only one of me. So
there you go.
it's tricky.
So I have one project in
yeah, it's still not enough for you.
Oh, wow. Well, you're right. The world needs more Max Liao.
Okay, the critical and botch. It's since the skills are based on percentage, the botch and the critical is based on your skill level of that percentage. So if you want to be basic, it's you take 10% of your total. Let's say you have a 54 in driving. That means your critical range is on the upper end of you would round down with the 5.4, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yes. So it'd be 5%.
Yeah.
So that means rounded nearest whole number and added to 90 is your critical score. So if you look on the chart, critical is oh no, it's 1 through 6. You actually rounded up on this one.
Okay, right, must have been.
Yeah, you rounded up. So
because it's a chart rather than a calculation, I guess.
So a 1 through 6, a rolling on a percentile, 1 through 6 would be a critical, but anything above the 54 is going to be a failure until you reach 96 or higher, because it goes the other way. So 6 out of 10 is your critical, but 4 out of 10, because it's the leftover of the 10%, is your botch. That means if you roll a 96 or higher, you're going to critically fail. Now, as you can see from this chart, depending on your starting score, like if you have an 81, 1 through 9 is a critical, and only 99 or 100 is going to be a botch. Now, I like the fact that the better you get at something, the less likely you're going to absolutely screw it up, because you are more knowledgeable. You would not make stupid mistakes. But the less you know about a skill, the more likely you are to make the stupid mistake. So if you have an 11%, your critical is only a 1 to 2. That means you got to roll a 1 to 2 on 100 to make a critical success. Not effing likely. But there is a 9%, or I'm sorry, an 8% chance that you're going to massively screw it up because you just don't know it very well.
Right.
I like that. But
under duress, remember, under duress.
Yeah. Under duress. I mean, still, if someone had like a 2% skill, I'd make him roll all the time because you suck. But whatever. But for me, the paragraph did not explain it so I can understand it. The chart, the chart crystallized it for me. The chart did it. If there wasn't the chart there, I might still be scratching my head after an hour.
Okay, call me the dumb American, but I wouldn't even have read that. I would have saw the chart and been like, okay, that's cute. I'm just going by the chart. I would have just moved on.
Well, it's something I struggle with in a lot of games. And when I play a lot of games, it's something I struggle with. No matter how skillful you are, a 1 is a botch, a 20 is a crit, or vice versa. Whatever the system might be. And that just doesn't seem to feel right. The way I've done it in other systems is like the D6 system. If you roll a 6 on that one dice, then that can add on. It's the normal rule. So I introduced the idea of an imploding dice. So if you are very skillful, then even if you get a bad roll on that dice, you can still succeed. And if you're not very skillful, then you need to roll several times to get a reasonable success. As a
fan of exploding dice, I like the sound of imploding.
Yeah. But I like the fact that if you look on that chart, if you have 100% in that skill, you cannot botch.
You can fail, but not botch. Yep.
Yeah.
No. Well, yeah, you can fail by rolling 100, obviously, if you wanted to. But even if you do that, it's still not a botch. You are that good. You cannot completely screw it up. I like that.
Yeah, I can't wait to actually. So, I used to tell you, Heathen Dog, that you're not going to like my game. Well, maybe you might like it now, because I'm not using a percentile system. Actually, if you saw it previously, Heathen Dog, you probably saw it.
This isn't about you.
I know, but I'm just letting you know I incorporate that same thing. So I'm feeling good about myself that maybe I need to start working on this again. All right. So is that all you want to say about the chart? When I looked at the chart, I got to be honest, I didn't even care what it said up here. Like, I just really didn't. It's like I saw the chart and said, oh, there's a chart. Great. That's what I would go off of.
I would say my craft has improved since 2006.
Well, hopefully through life, all of our craft. My God, one of the problems that I'm having with this one, because I don't have an editor and I edit myself and I'm such an asshole when it comes to segment 1. And I'm such a jerk when it comes to editing. If you've watched any of the episodes in the past, I really take issue with how things are written and so forth. And I find myself actually editing more than creating. And that's one of the things I've been told by a lot of people who actually write. They're like, stop doing that. Edit at the end or get somebody else edit it. But you got to write, because that's what's causing you your writer's block. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. So going on here, a couple of things that I wanted to mention. I've got this on my notes that I thought was actually pretty cool. And I don't think, did we pass them or are we there yet? No, actually, we're getting there right now. If you look at these special checks, exert strength, shock survival. We're not going to go into them unless you really want to, but toxin resistant, some of the stuff that you'd consider. Willpower and fear. Oh, that's got to be important, obviously. But what I really liked, it must come later, is I liked how this game had all these things. To me, this helps to tell a story, even if it's not directly telling the story at this point. Is you have hit points, you have blood points, you have transfusions. Oh, that's a thing. You have tourniquets. It even turned into a Japanese anime show because it worries about blood type. And we'll get to some of that later, which I think the blood type thing might be a little too deep, but I get I get the importance of it.
Yeah.
So, that's that weird line between remember in the 90s where everybody was trying to make these hyper realistic systems and books would be 400 pages and 350 of them would just be charts and graphs and rules and so forth based on reality.
Oh, Zurcher has a question. Is your skill a threshold? Meaning if you have a 30% and you roll a 30, is that a success or a failure?
I would say that's a success, but I probably didn't put it explicitly in the text.
Okay.
I thought I saw that. I think it is in there. Again, we're not going over every nuance of everything. I thought I saw it in there, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Well, because I just got it from the horse's mouth, so we're good.
Yep. The blood type thing and the sort of amateur surgery and so on, but that was a part of the original game. Oh. So again, I felt bound to include that.
The thing is it, like I said, it helps to tell the story. Now, I, as a game master, probably wouldn't care and incorporate that, but I do like that it is there. I mean, I'd probably hear it is right here. Yeah, blood type, and it's a percentage chance and so forth. It's like, okay. But it tells, it goes to show the visceral nature that, hey, look, you're going to bleed. You've got somebody with a big machete or claws, or my favorite horror, if you want to call it horror, it's more science fiction, but I love Hellraiser. You're going to get ripped apart. Yeah, okay, anyway.
In the third edition, I'm probably going to keep the spirit of that, but take it slightly more generic. So any kind of amateur surgery, improvised equipment, that sort of thing, and take it on a more general level. Mm-hmm.
Well, with the way people game now, so here's a question for you, a little off topic, but I want to ask this question. When you do your games, I'm not talking the ones on stream unless that's all you do. Do you play for 2, 3, 4 hours, or do you play for 8, 9, 10 hours?
So I'm before the COOF, I met my regular gaming group every month and a half, and we play Friday night, Saturday all day, Sunday morning sometimes. Okay, so that makes up for that would drive me crazy. Yeah. I'm the type of person that I just remember the old days where it's like you gave up your entire Saturday. It was an 8-hour session, so probably 10 hours if you consider drive time, getting set up, breaks, awarding experience, the after chat, so on and so forth. Played for 10 hours, and it was weekly. And if you miss more than 1 week, you're out of the group. Just crazy things like that. We used to all house share, so it would be
Oh, that's easy.
Friday through Sunday all the time, pretty much.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, it's difficult because they all live in Reading, which is a large town or small city, depending on your perspective, which is quite a way away from me, and I live in the sticks, so it's a bit trickier.
Yeah, nowadays though, if you notice, like I don't know, again, I don't know the circles that you're in with regard to this, but I've talked to people out here in Germany. To be fair, most of them are in the Air Force, they're professionals, and when you're an American out here, you want to do a lot of travel, and I get that. I did all my traveling the first time I was here 5 years ago, but to try to get them to play for more than 4 hours is like pulling teeth. To try to get them to play every week is like pulling teeth. I'm like, how do you get a game done? So with that in mind, simplifying the rules for the more modern, I think you're doing yourself a favor. Even if I don't personally like it, I think you are doing yourself a favor in regard to sales to the more modern crowd.
And there's more of a market for pickup games, I think. Yeah, single session, one-off adventures, things that you can just sort of pick up and do. I mean, there's even a market for single-player games now. That's a bit of a trend on YouTube. I don't really get that. If I want to play something solo, I'll pick up an old fighting fantasy book or something.
There you go.
So, I don't know. I don't quite get it. I want to understand it, and I'm going to investigate it a bit more. But
I was talking with Von Zark on our Discord. He's probably the person I've known the longest. I went to high school with him. And I told him about that. I said, yeah, it's like, because he was talking about these small groups, like how do people game with like 3 to 4 people? Because again, in our day, it was like 7 to 8, and that was the small group, things like that. It's like, they make a lot of these games now, like especially when I'm looking at them on Kickstarter. If you remember when I was talking about the Kickstarter stuff earlier, like a lot of them say made for solo play or can be played solo. And I'm just like, but this is supposed to be a social game. I mean, I get COVID and whatnot, whatever. Yeah. I don't care about YouTube's rules, but
my old tabletop vampire group had 40 players.
Oh, Jesus.
Not all at the same time, obviously, but people would come in and out with their characters, and we would do the occasional LARP, and we just ended up translating the campaign into a LARP system in the end. But yeah, I prefer, if I'm not going to be able to play a face-to-face game with a lot of people, I'm far more interested in asynchronous gaming, something like De Profundis or something like that, rather than just playing by myself. Masturbation's fun, but it's a lot more fun with other people.
Fair enough. So with that, not the masturbation part, but with that in mind, I forgot what I was going to ask. Seriously, you made me forget the question I was going to ask. That is awesome. 1 internet point to Grim for making me forget what I was going to ask. And when I remember, I will bring that back. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to, again, Insanity Fog. Love it. Method, unfiltered breathing of strange mist. I mean, it gives you all the horror tropes in here. Absolutely love it. So, one of the questions I was going to ask you, but you already answered it, and I think we talked about, so I'm going to answer it for you if you don't mind, and then you can tell me I'm an idiot for how I answer it, is I asked earlier, like, what niche does this fit? Like, why would I play this over, say, Call of Cthulhu or Chill? Those are the only two I really know. And here's the simple answer. What game does true visceral horror in the aspect of a horror movie? Look, I don't know of any other game that does. I'm not saying that those game systems can't. For Shadzar, who hates when you cross-contaminate systems and so forth, like use mechs using a D&D type system and so forth. If you don't want to cross-pollinate, boom, you've got a game that is built from the ground up for it. The niche this game fills is the slasher flick. I don't know any other slasher flick systems out there, at least not AAA ones. Do you, Heathen Dog?
No, not AAA. I've seen some that are based off of loosely based off of a Friday the 13th type scenario.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Yeah,
but they don't. I haven't run into one that does it well.
Yeah. They don't have versatility.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of pop culture references throughout this, but that was present in the original book, so that was something I carried forward, because sometimes it's just fun to play out a movie for yourself. We've all had that experience watching films. Like, no, don't do that. That's stupid. Don't do that. Here's what I would do in that situation. Well, okay, let's play The Thing or Night of the Living Dead or whatever else. I'd say as well as slasher films, I would say it's good for the kind of video nasty sort of stuff. Cannibal Holocaust or Green Inferno for the more modern version, things like that. You can do that kind of thing very well with this as well.
I see most systems as pretty much genre agnostic, depending on how you want to use it. Like if I were to do a visceral fantasy game, I could see myself using this system to incorporate
I ran D&D games using blood, and they were absolutely hilarious in a grotesque, horrible way.
Grotesque fashion, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so there was the...
Todd has something for you here in chat.
Hey, Graham, I'm solo gaming cheerleader. Feel free to pick my brain. I'll gladly do an info dump about solo gaming and the solo communities. Yes,
that'd be great. Message me on your platform of choice, and we'll talk about it at some point.
And we will show Grimm's Twitter and so forth again when we're done with all this. So if you didn't catch it at the beginning, do it again at the end. I'm going to slow down a little bit for the combat turn. I'm not going to like nuance this, but just to show people like generically how a combat turn is done. You roll an initiative. Got your attacks. Remember, you have action allocation. This is the part that he was kind of stating earlier could be a little confusing. And I'm not going to lie to you in my skimming of this, because I really only skimmed this. I would say, yes, it is. But to me, like any system, once you put, minis or imagination on table, you'll figure it out. And I'm so used to playing games from the 90s that tried to get really convoluted. I don't know if it was intentional, but there's just this way, and I know I've said it multiple times today, but there was just this way that people wrote games from like 1989 to 1995 that was, how complex can we be? I'm not talking encyclopedic miniature games like D&D 3rd edition or 4th edition. I'm talking like, how many charts and graphs and so forth can we have to make the game realistic? And that I appreciate. I'm not saying I like it. I'm saying I appreciate it. And this is one of those games where with the action allocation, you actually have to take a little bit of time to understand how that affects a combat turn. Get attacks, dodge, parry, complications. I didn't actually read these complications. I thought the complications were something else. So now I'm ignorant. got vehicles. I did get sidetracked by this image because it really grossed me out. But at the same time, I couldn't look away from it. I was like, that's... Oh my eye.
Clockwork Orange action right there.
I am freaked out by anything to do with eyes. I think because my eyesight is so terrible. But
like I said, we'll compare.
it's like the only thing I can remember from the Crow sequel is the tattooist's shop and the guy having the tattoo needle brought in close to his eye, and that's it squicks me out. So because it squicked me out, I had to.
I always start blinking anytime I see anything like that. Like somebody brings a knife edge towards somebody's eye or something. I'm always like, stop it.
Oh yeah. When they do that puff thing at the opticians and blow air in your eye, I can't stand it. Oh.
Yeah,
makes me skin crawl.
I actually had put in my medical records not to give me the numbing drops because it makes me pass out. So I can take the actual dilating drops, the stinging ones, because they don't sting that badly. But as soon as they put those numbing drops in, I'm like, out. Like, how do you pass out with numbing drops? I don't know.
So just to quickly riff on that, right? There's this whole trend at the moment that you should avoid anything that upsets or triggers your players. In horror, you want to upset and disgust and to make people unsettled. It's like the reason I put the eye image in is because I'm squicked out by it, right? And if I know a player has a fear of spiders, you can bet if I'm running a horror game, there are going to be spiders.
Well, you actually mentioned that in this book, exactly that concept. If it's something that messes with you, and I think you even said it about yourself, if I remember correctly, but you did put something like that in the book that said, these are the things that are supposed to trigger you. Now, Heathen Dog and I, we already did an episode, one of our earlier episodes on the whole consent and gaming crap and X-Card, which don't get me started. That's a whole, we got a video on that. If I'm not feeling emotionally invested in the game, and that means whether I'm pissed off or I'm laughing or I'm scared, or the story I tell everybody is literally the first time I ever played AD&D in my life. I was 10 years old, so 1983. I remember we were fighting giant ants. And I remember at the end of that, so I have a thing with bugs. You want to get me my Room 101 from 1984? It's bugs, man. I am a 5-year-old screaming little girl when it comes to bugs. Nope. But I remember bike riding home at age 10 thinking, giant ants. I loved it. I'm telling you, to this day, I remember that. And I want that back. I want something that gets into my noodle. Not just like, okay, 4 hobgoblins, roll to attack. And that's why I think the visceral side or the psychological side is something that I enjoy, where the horror genre itself is not my thing. But I like that take on it because I want to feel that. That's disgusting what just happened there. This is not... do you remember it was a couple years ago when Pathfinder removed a couple of demons from a book? I damn near freaked out. Because I don't play Pathfinder at all because I can't stand the people of Paizo. But I couldn't believe, like, why would you take that out? Well, it's harmful to people. That's what a demon is supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, they've already reclaimed the orc. They seem to be starting in on demons now. This is why I really love Goblin Slayer, and I am obsessed with Goblin Slayer, because right from the start, it's like, this is not fluffy fantasy. There are real stakes here. Goblins are effing horrible. You do not want to be caught by them, and if you don't play it right, you're gonna die. And it's just fantastic. It was just such a breath of fresh air.
I'm not an anime, but anime person. That's Heathen Dog right there. He used to do anime reviews all the time, and I tell you, I watched Goblin Slayer simply because of that. And I'm like, yes, it's like, you know, the whole. I don't care if somebody makes a game and says we're gonna make happy fluffy ponies. I don't care. I don't care if somebody makes a game and says, in my game, let's use Earth Dawn. That's the game I ran probably the most. They turned orcs and trolls and so forth into its own mythos, into its own, you know, they have their own ecology and so forth.
RuneQuest probably people too.
Yeah, RuneQuest probably did that first.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Earth Dawn is, I mean, it's 90s, so yeah, RuneQuest was way older than that. I'm with you on that. I don't have a problem with any of that. Where I have the problem with this is changing the games we know and love already, like Dungeons and Dragons. Now, people can argue, well, it's a different company, blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to get too sidetracked on this, but that's where my vitriol comes from. Don't change what we already have. If you don't like it, go make your own stuff.
Yeah, and I am not a racist or a colonialist because fictional orcs in my fictional game are fictionally horrible. Right? They're not stand-ins.
You're a writer. What do they tell you when you write? You have to have a recognizable antagonist.
Yeah. But we just lose so much from this, and I don't think people recognize it. I don't know, like you say, we don't want to get too sidetracked. So.
Right. So, but to bring it back in, that's what I love about a game like Blood, where I like the fact that you identify it, you talk about it. I have to be fair. I'm not going to lie to you. I can't see myself necessarily playing it unless somebody else runs it.
Yeah.
It's just because I, first of all, couldn't do the horror genre any justice. I'd be the worst person ever for that. But I'm promising you this. There are aspects of this game that I'm going to incorporate into an Astonishing Swordsman and Sorcerers or a Forbidden Lands type game because I like how it's presented here. And I think that is what encapsulates, for me, what encapsulates what I love about this game so much is to feel the tone and the story.
Sorry, yeah, that's become a bigger thing for me, I think, as my career's progressed. I mean, you look at something like Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and it's really just basic D&D, right? But the way in which he presents it and he talks about it and everything, the advice, the support, all of that really hammers home in an effective way what you're supposed to do with it and how it's supposed to work. So I don't like to dictate to people how to play a game, but anything else you can do to try and encourage and enable people to play in an effective way.
Now, this is where I'm kind of a jerk. I do believe in telling people the right way to play. But what I mean by that is if you're playing Dungeons & Dragons, play Dungeons & Dragons. If you're playing Blood, play Blood. If you're playing Battletech, play Battletech. The point, though, you know, if you're playing a World of Darkness game, play the World of Darkness game. Don't try to jam that game or that game's sensibilities into this game. Play this game the way it was meant to be played. Yeah. I'm not saying don't house rule. I'm not saying, you know, everybody homebrews. My point being is stick to the tone, stick to the way the game was meant to be played. If you don't like how this game is created, the mythos of it or the rule system of it, play a different game or create one of your own. Mm. And I think you've taken that to heart. You've created, what, 15 games?
There you go.
A lot.
Did you
mental issues? Hang on, mental issues.
I figured you'd want to stop here.
Section. The name is horrible. You got to brand it. Got to brand it. But there is a chart on page 81.
Oh yeah.
I would never ever roll on this table ever, because
really?
what you've done is give the games master a gift, a beautiful gift in all of these different kinds of temporary and long-term insanities, because you can just give them like okay, you now have qualified for getting yourself a short-term derangement because this and this, you failed this a roll, and then you pick the one that is good for that situation. I would never ever roll.
Do you think you should always just, the games master, give it to the character?
Yes, I would always pick it for that situation, for that person, because there's a chance it just won't make sense if you roll a random table. But so you get so many, especially the sadomasochism one. That's funny. They turned into sadomasochist. That'd be great.
I saw that, and he explained it. That's what
yes.
I loved it.
Yes, it's great. But you can tailor it to the situation and to the person, and there is enough variation and explanation and choices that almost every situation you go, oh, okay, that's going to be a phobia, that's going to be manic depression, that's going to be a delusion, that's going to be a compulsion, if you fail in that situation.
Right. So these days I would agree with you. I probably wouldn't include a chart unless maybe to explicitly say that this is a backup for the GM if they lack inspiration. Right. So I've incorporated some of these ideas into Grimdark, which is a set of nasty rules for 5th ed to make it feel a bit more like an old school game. So that's the way I treat it more in this. Oh, there's so much to say on this.
I'll hit the mute button and let you go.
Right. I have mental health issues. 2006, I was in the process of being diagnosed. So I have suicidal bouts of depression. I have a sort of general anxiety, but mostly social anxiety. And I have dependency disorder. And I was diagnosed in 2007. So I was in the process of being diagnosed at this time. And I've been struggling with that ever since. So it was about this sort of time that I really began thinking about mental health issues and wanting to incorporate them into the game, but in ways that made more sense. It's not that I'm sensitive to it. It's that I just want it represented in a more realistic way. So this is like a very early beginning incarnation of what I've brought into other games. And like you say, a table doesn't necessarily make sense, though it can serve as inspiration. So these days, what I tend to go for is either allowing the players to decide how their fear manifests or how their madness manifests, or as the GM, if I feel like I've got enough information and I know the player well enough to just tell them, in what way they break. Because this is one of the big issues with horror games, I think, is that fear and madness necessarily take agency away from the player. And generally speaking, you don't want to do that in a game because it takes away their participation. It makes them feel like they're not playing their character anymore. Or if you give them a random madness, it just might not fit with the concept of their character or their background. So by taking it on yourself or allowing them to choose, that enables them to retain a lot of that player agency. And that gets around that kind of problem. So the way I tend to approach it now is I think, well, okay, like in Grimdark, I say you should identify ways in which your character's psyche might fracture, so that under stress, you've made the decision that your character maybe they become depressed and they drown themselves in drink, or they hurt themselves to manifest the pain as something physical and real that they can deal with on that level. So that way you retain some player agency, but you also allow for the horror and madness to manifest. I think that's everything I wanted to say about that.
I hope Krantz isn't talking about
Krantz is right. I'm not. It's not going to be a big fight, but I am on the other side of the player agency fence. The worst thing to happen to a great story is any player. I give them I give them options, but they're not really options. They can make all the moves they want, but they're just dancing in the palm of my hand. I don't let them have actual agency. I make them believe they have agency, and for them, it's the same thing. They believe they're making choices. They believe they're making decisions, but really they're not. And for my style of gameplay, that's best for the story. yeah, Krantz, we've had discussions about this a lot. So, yeah,
I can't find it. You got a comment. I haven't posted it to you yet, but you got a comment about the player agency thing on one of our YouTube. Wow, we got a bunch of comments right now.
Yeah, once you said the words player agency, our viewers who know me just got, oh, here it comes. Oh,
okay. Well, let me just say something else then, in
Please.
case it changes any of that. Right. So I don't think railroading really exists exactly. Like you're saying, it's all about creating the illusion of choice and the space in which the players feel like they're making actions that's all their own choice. And that's a big part of the art of being the games master, I think, is sort of herding the cats into the right part. They don't need to know that you've moved the furniture around behind the scenes or whatever. As long as they feel that they've got agency. Mm-hmm. That's the important part.
So somebody who's played in one of Heathen Dog, actually more than one, but in some of Heathen Dog's games, this is and I had a discussion with this about somebody with somebody about this behind the scenes, and this person is like, I will never play in one of Heathen Dog's games. Well, that's true anyway, but it came down to I can tell you his illusion works because in the games that I've been in, I've never felt like your character must do this. At least I don't remember that. Yeah. Your character must go this way. So the illusion is presented there. However, I will also say on the flip side of this, and while we're still in segment one, I won't go too deeply into this, but it does make the next time I play in one of his games a little, just knowing it. It's like that illusion has been shattered.
You know now that I'm there, you want to look behind it now.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So what is Bob, Max? What? Wait, what
was it Bob that you were talking to? Bob.
No, Bob.
He actually played my game.
No. This was something way more recent.
Way more recent. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, so
we can move on from that. So the mental issue thing, I really like because you give enough variation and enough explanation to where
I love this comment.
You can fit it to the situation that happens.
Oh, that was the other thing. Right. Okay. So as you can see, I'm a fairly countercultural kind of guy. Like you were saying before we came on.
So British.
I'm a kinkster. So like the mental health issues, it's important to me that kink is represented more accurately.
To be 100% honest, one of the reasons why I'm really happy you're here, and did I tell you this before we started the stream? I can't remember. Is the fact that if you look at Heathen Dog and I, we're like clean cut white guys from Midwest, whatever. I actually really, because honestly, if you watch our other videos, I'm sure that there's some videos that we've got out there that you're going to be like, God, these guys are assholes. I honestly, because we've got our opinions about people that do blue hair.
I value disagreement, and I like having my brain poked with ideas and attitudes that are absolutely not my own. So I have watched your videos. Sometimes you're assholes, but I like that.
well, see, and that's honestly why I like having this. Why I like having this conversation with you, because we're getting along, we're laughing. We disagree. We talked a little bit, a couple days ago. I've watched a lot of your videos. Some of them like, yeah, nope. But I want everybody to watch your videos. We're going to post your links out there because you need this. You honestly, you have to hear from people who aren't the same as you. Now, you don't need to live in that bubble little world like some of the people out there, but you have to hear from people who aren't the same as you. If you look at Grim and you look at me, you already know he's not the type of person I generally hang out with. However, this dude has been awesome. He was awesome on our Discord when he talked to me the other day. He's awesome here. We're having a good time. Guess what? First impressions are a bit true, but also don't judge a book by its cover. I'm an asshole, even though I look clean cut, and he's a nice guy. So
you look like you don't want to be in an alley with him. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, right? So
yeah, I'm a nice guy, even though I look like a homeless Gandalf who's been dragged back.
Homeless Gandalf. No, but no matter.
Someone called me that. They called me Hobo Gandalf, and I love it.
That's awesome.
I take that as a compliment. I mean, myself personally. But no, no matter what happens in segment 1 or 2, the end of the rest segment or 1 or 2, thank you for being here. We absolutely, honestly, I'm glad you're here. This has turned out 100 times better than when you first sent that message that I thought was going to happen, because I'm like, I'm going to say something. This dude's going to want to punch me in the face.
Well, yeah, you kind of asked where the nickname Grim came from, right? Sure. So when I was at college, when I was at college, my parents were breaking up. I was very depressed, and I dealt with it with humor. And I used to tell a lot of sick jokes, like dead baby jokes, you know, like what's red and pink and bangs into walls, a baby with forks in its eyes, that kind of thing. I would deal with it all by that kind of humor, right? And at the time, slang for something disgusting was that's grim. And my name was James, Jim, Grim, Jim. So that's how it came about.
Okay.
But it kind of sets the tone for my life, I suppose.
There you go.
Yeah, you know, you've talked a bit about your past. I mean, I'm not gonna. We can maybe talk a little bit more in segment 2. I mean, I think we all have pasts of one way or the other. You know, things have happened in our lives that we don't like, but at the same time,
I've killed more people than both of you have met.
That may be true. I don't know. At least he keeps them behind that server wall back there. But
Navy SEAL copy pasta. Yeah.
is that you know, we all have experiences that lead us to where we are. So I mean, again, if I love self-deprecating humor, and you know, one of the things that I work in an office of that as well, thank God. But one of the things that really irks me is when you can't say that because it might hurt somebody because you don't know what they've been through. It's like they need to get over it. Like, and I'm not saying get over pain or get over mental illness or get over, like, look, I can't get over misophonia. Laugh about it all you want. I know Heathen Dog does. It's as real to me as it is to anybody.
Deal with your pain and grow back stronger. Anti-fragile, or as my friend Rachel says, anti-fra.
Exactly. Anti-fra. That's nice. That's where, like, when the was a board game captain wrote back and he said, "Go eat shit." I didn't take this like, "F you, man." No, I was like, "Oh, this guy's awesome. Now we can have a conversation." You know, I guess that's how I look at it. So,
sometimes background's relevant, like it was in the mental health thing, and it does
absolutely.
I think it informs what anybody creates.
Okay, and I didn't see a disclaimer in there that said not trying to harm anybody, like Palladium did.
This is segment 2. Let's come on back, Kat.
That's true.
You said you wanted to touch on the creatures.
Yes, actually, this one specifically, Angels of Pain. Now, if we look through how a creature is in this book, it gives you relative stats and then gives you the average. So, you kind of just roll it up like you would a player character. Oh, and then it's got derived and it's got this other ones on here, right?
Or if you just need to throw something in, you can use the average stats.
This is what I got a visual of this more than any other one you wrote. And I don't know if it's because it was the first one or what, but there was something that I loved about this. But there was one line that you wrote that kind of ruined it for me because it proved that I was right. And I was like, oh, but Angel of Pain can fly at double their sprinting speed. Angel of Pain are tireless and never lose energy point. Okay, that isn't it. For individual, different signature. Okay, hook chains right off the bat. Now I'm getting a Hellraiser vibe. And I love Hellraiser, okay? So these attacks retain the painful ecstasy effect, however. Now, I want to stop here for just a second because one of the things that I think is done wrong, I'll say it, is people don't run succubi correctly in D&D. Oh, look, it's beautiful and it's got a tail and you sleep within its draining your soul. No, it's a demon. It's supposed to have this dichotomy, this like, I'm enamored with it. I have to be with it, but God, it hurts, but it feels so good. And I felt that this is to me the perfect succubus. Each angel can raise a person from the dead. Oh, well, not as a zombie, but you're actually alive. Like, that's creepy. And prefer not to kill victims immediately, but mutilate. That's gross. Okay. So again, I'm looking at this as half succubus, half Cenobite. Am I far off?
That's about right. I mean, the original book, pretty much every creature is a riff off something from popular culture. And I didn't revise them much, but I tried to edge it away and make it slightly less obvious, perhaps.
Except for you put this line in here.
Yeah.
I was like, no, why? Why, God, why? Because I really like this. I like the write-up. I'm not going to go through the entire thing, but I really like the write-up. I like the background flavor text right there. I even like the rules text and so forth. But when I read this line, I was like punched in the gut. I was like, no. I like the fact that my imagination led me there, but didn't just blatantly say it. And I was like, oh, there it is. As with all the creatures, I like the adventure seeds. You give 3 examples of how to throw the creatures in the game. But I'm telling you, I'm going to I will change the name and I will not use it exactly, so don't sue me. But I am going to utilize this the next time I introduce a succubus, because this to me is the way a succubus should be, in my opinion. So that's all I have to say about this.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Now, we're up on 2 hours now. Is there something else on this game that we haven't spoken about that you believe is important for people to know before they buy, or to get them to buy? Suck you bite. Yeah.
Well, I don't know when the third edition is going to be out. I've got too many projects, so it probably is worth picking this one up. I tend to keep my prices low anyway, so you won't be particularly ripped off by it. Of the creatures, the seldom seen. I don't actually know what inspired those for the original author. Maybe the goblin in Cat's Eye or something.
I love the write-up of it, though.
But they've surprised me every time I've used them in a game, despite being a little bit sort of reticent. They've worked really well. There's something about them that's just horrifying. Like having
little dudes, but like you said, like little Lilliputians, like with the little pinpoint in your eye. Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So one game where I ran them, they were infesting an office block that had been not an office block, a block of flats apartments that had been built near an old plague pit in London. So they'd been feasting on the dead for God knows how many years, and then they infested this block of apartments, and that was just horrifying. And it kind of set itself up naturally with the characters being neighbors that knew each other. And you don't think like little cartoony goblins is gonna work, but it does. I don't know why.
If they're in the shadows properly, and if you've got a game master that can just describe, put you in that scene, I could see them be. I like I said, I loved it when I first read them. Like after the Angel of Pain, that was my next favorite one that I read. I was like, I like the direction that this is going. I would not be able to use them effectively, so I will never use them in a game of mine because I'd probably turn them into Smurfs or a joke. But
yeah, it's all about build up. So you keep them hidden until right at the end. And you just have them doing things.
Yeah. You don't see the creature until it's suspensefully appropriate.
So they're killing people's pets, and they're crawling around in the walls and causing like fires by shorting out the electrics. Shit like that. And then eventually you do the reveal at the end.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I understand the concept. I just suck at it. Oh, real quickly about weapons, unless you wanted to talk about something else up there. I love the fact that you had, first of all, screwdrivers. But where was it? The light bulb. When I saw the light bulb, I couldn't help but laugh. You got the chainsaw, of course. You got to have the chainsaw. Where was the light bulb? Where the hell was that?
I don't know why the copy you've got has got the really thick lines in the tables, because the one I'm looking at doesn't. And I did update the file, but it makes it a bit less easy to read.
Well, there's a better quality version of this out there. I mean, I chalked it up to being a 90s book. I don't know why. That's just, I remember a lot of this. But when I saw the light bulb, I was like, okay, really? But I get it. You got the shattered light bulb. I'm like, yes, go away.
But this was a big thing in the first game, and something that people found funny and a lot of fun. It's not that easy to reference during play, but it was fun to read and fun to write. I think for a third edition, I'd probably still include everything, but I'd have a simplified version. It's like small object, medium object, large object, cutting, blunt, whatever, and do it that way. So you can very quickly and easily, generically, run off a weapon just from whatever anyone happens to pick up. And
then maybe just have some flavor text of a character using a light bulb or whatever you think is important.
For many years, I ran Blood at a small convention here in the UK, which unfortunately has been wound up, which was called IndieCon. And the Blood game was a highlight for a lot of people. Because if you managed to survive one of my Blood games, it was like a badge of honor. And in one of those, a pie tin became notorious for slaughtering things.
Nice. Just a basic pie tin, or like as in folded up into something maybe a little sharper?
I don't know if you have them in the States, but it's a tin with an actual pie in it that you buy, and then you open it up like a can.
Okay.
And you cook it that way. But they're made by Fray Bentos. So Fray Bentos steak and kidney pies became this godlike weapon in Blood just through coincidental critical hits.
There you go. No,
See, I
speaking
love
of
it.
the critical hits, that's a good one. Like I said earlier, in this thing, the critical hits make this an extremely visceral
And there are a lot of them.
There are a lot of them, yes. An extremely visceral and dangerous, deadly game. There is a critical hit for whatever wound you can think of.
Yeah, this was always a big selling point of the game. I mean, you don't have to go literally with whatever's rolled. You can take it as inspiration, but people love the critical hit tables.
I'm still a fan. Like, again, oh, look, you did double damage because of critical. Screw that. I want to know that critical means something, and that botch, on the other hand, that it means something. So when I looked at this critical chart, I have to admit, I was like, oh God, I thought mine was dangerous. This is crazy. I love it. but it fits. And that's the thing, is it's not just silly. It's not just like over the top. No, it fits the genre. It fits what the game is trying to sell.
Well, my first proper RPG was Middle-earth Role-Playing by Iron Crown Enterprises, which was a sort of beginner's edition of Rolemaster. And that was notorious for its critical hits.
Yes.
Like, what's the most well-known? You trip over an invisible turtle and crack your skull or something. It's one of the old Rolemaster criticals. So this didn't seem out of place to me because I came up, not through D&D. And yeah, people love the crits.
Ambrose Fott accidentally used caps, but said, I love that hat.
Thank
there you go. Since you're the only one wearing a hat.
You want to buy your own.
Like, let's give an example.
Where do you want me to stop?
Heavy caliber bullet.
What page?
It's up.
I think I already passed it.
Yeah, you did pass it. But
Number 2.
You a critical is done upon you, and someone shot you with a 45 or a 44. And okay, we're gonna roll on the heavy caliber bullet critical hit table. The best thing that could happen to you is you get a piece of your foot shot off, and you're at half movement speed until you get that sorted out.
Shot him in his pinky toe.
Yeah, basically, yeah, and you're screwed. And the worst thing that happened to you, obviously, you instantly die. But that's on 100 you die. Well, that's not too bad. No, on 100 you die instantly.
This is actually kind of
on a range of being hit with a 44 caliber bullet. You will die. Maybe not that second, but 5 seconds from now, 10 seconds from now, 4 minutes, maybe. You are dying. Anywhere between 91 and higher, you're just gonna die. It's just a different way of doing it, which is what a 44 will do to an unarmored person.
And even the lower rolls, because of the way blood loss works.
Yes, you will die without.
You might well die anyway, just not straight away.
Yeah,
That's why there are transfusion rules.
There you go. 62. Brutal wound slams into your knee and blows it out along with a section of your leg. Your lower leg tumbling away from the force of the impact, leaving you with a stump at the base of your thigh. Crawling only. All checks made at minus 10%, plus 50% damage that this attack did, and make a shock check or fall unconscious. And then
you're hoping to fall unconscious.
Hoping to fall unconscious at this point. But you've had your leg blown off. It should also say start bleeding mechanics.
The damage determines how much you bleed.
Oh, well,
so you'll take the hit.
Right.
Yeah, so you take the hit points, you cross-reference that, and that will tell you how much blood loss you've got, and you're probably
going to die from that. Yeah,
you're probably going to bleed out in maximum of 5 turns.
Yeah. So
I think I figured out that the average character has between 25 and 30 hit points if you kind of put your stats towards that degree in the game. And there are some weapons in here. The scythe, for example, I think averages 27 points per hit, if I remember correctly. So some of these, just the weapons alone, are pretty much insta kills, or at least they're going to get you to bleeding, which makes sense.
That's why it's important.
I mean, if you're hit with something like a bastard sword with no armor on, you hit anywhere, you're dead. I mean, you hit the arm, you lost your arm. I hit you in the leg, you lost your leg. I hit you anywhere in the mid region.
At best, it's mangled.
Die.
Yes.
Yeah. That's why it's important to prompt people that, this is deadly. You need to think about that. You need to be prepared to die. You need to be prepared to think about your next character.
And you even said that right at the beginning of the game. Like in the book, it is written in there. So
I've been lucky in that nobody that I've played it with has had an issue with suddenly and abruptly being killed.
How can you playing a game like that? And I'm asking that honestly. Like, how can you playing a game like this? You should know what you, even if you don't have a session 0, you should still know what you're getting into. You're getting into a slasher flick, or you're getting into a visceral horror game where everything is out to kill you, and that's its job, is to kill you. I mean, even with that nice paragraph or two that you had in there about, hey, the game master, you don't have to be a jerk. You're not out here to be adversarial to the players. The game is already doing that itself. I'm confused as to why anybody would even have a problem.
Dark Souls on paper. That's what Travis says.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. They do, though. And I think it's a generational thing. Like I've said, I didn't come up on D&D, but I did come up on MERP, which could randomly kill you out of the blue, and things like Dragon Warriors, where you've got a very low amount of hit points, Ring Quest, Call of Cthulhu. These are all fairly deadly, and even basic D&D. If you're playing a wizard, you could start with 1 hit point. A stiff breeze can finish you off. But that experience is missing now. And while it's not always the most fun experience, I think it's something that is missing and that has value of its own. And playing something deadly and having to think tactically, and having to stack the cards in your favor rather than just charging in willy-nilly.
Well, I see it as risk reward. I mean, if there is risk, the reward feels so much better. And somebody, I read it on a forum post, or maybe it's even a YouTube comment at some point on one of the channels I was watching, where a commenter said, old D&D, whether basic or advanced D&D, is 0 to hero, where modern, third, fourth, especially 5th edition D&D is hero to superhero. And I don't know how you run your games. I don't even know if D&D is your favorite thing in the world. But when I run a fantasy game, I like it to be low magic. I like it to be visceral. Using that word again, that should be the drinking game for today. I like it. I don't know. I don't like. It's just all solved by magic, which is why I never liked Forgotten Realms, because I think that Forgotten Realm is too cosmopolitan, it's too homogenous, and it has just magic as the excuse for everything. I like there to be, like we were talking earlier, that plausibility. I like there to be some understanding. I like there to be some research. That just walking around the next corner, somebody could throw a rock on your noggin and you could die.
Yeah, that's my preference. I do also play more sort of story-led games where it's more sort of high drama and hyper real, rather than realistic. I've never been a huge D&D person. When I have played it, I've tended to prefer things like Dark Sun, which are a bit more gritty. But the game I run for the adult entertainers, the tabletop-less game that I run, that's pretty much straight 5th ed. And while it's a lot of fun, I'm having a hard time figuring out an appropriate level of challenge, even though they've got rules for setting challenge level and how many baddies and what level and so on they should be. I'm finding it too easy a lot of the time. So I find that hard to gauge. My default is always to that more sort of gritty, low fantasy, 1st edition Warhammer Fantasy roleplay. Yeah, that sort of thing is where I feel most comfortable with fantasy games at any rate.
I think with our differences aside, I think you and I actually would enjoy the same type of games in that regard. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Then otherwise I can get this on the screen. People can see our noggins a little bigger and we can talk some more.
I think we've covered most things.
Okay.
That are at least that are specific to this.
Yeah,
just under 2 hours for this. Hey, we didn't do too badly. I was scared it was going to go 3-4 hours on.
And send it off on the cover so everyone can see the cover.
Yes, absolutely. Well, don't we have a little? Do you want to mention the other thing that I told you not to let me forget?
I've forgotten. So.
I never knew in the first place.
Yeah. See.
Well, no, we're going to give away a physical copy of this game.
Oh, that's great.